In the future, the United States has collapsed under the weight of a devastating drought. Water has become so rare that people are willing to kill for it. Most families have abandoned their homes and migrated elsewhere, but the Holm family stayed behind because the father, Ernest Holm, is convinced that the land will grow green again if he can just find water. Ernest remembers when the fields were alive, but his teenage son, Jerome, grew up knowing only dust and dryness. One day, two thieves try to break into a small shed on the Holm farm by burning the lock. Ernest catches them in the act and fires at them immediately. One thief shoots back, and Ernest kills him on the spot. The second thief begs for mercy, explaining that someone told him there was water inside the shed. He pretends he needs to use the bathroom and reaches into his pocket, but Ernest notices he's going for a gun, so he shoots him as well. From a distance, Jerome sees everything and tells his father he could have helped, but Ernest simply tells him that if he wants to be a man, he should start by calling him Dad, not Ernest. When Ernest opens the shed, Jerome learns that it contains a well, but the well is dry. Even the donkey carrying their supplies can't drink. Ernest forces the animal to keep walking under the scorching sun, and eventually they meet a group known as the Water Men. These men control all the water extracted from deep wells through government contracts, giving them enormous power. Ernest trades food and supplies with them in exchange for a few barrels of water. Jerome realizes they must never anger these men. They are far more dangerous than they appear. Ernest constantly tries to convince them to give him more water for his land, but their prices are high. On the way back home, the exhausted donkey collapses and badly injures itself. Its screams disturb Ernest so much that he shoots it to end its suffering. Jerome cries, but claims he would have done the same thing if needed. Back home, Ernest's daughter Mary gives them food, then washes the dishes using dirt. There's no water to waste. Ernest listens to the radio while Jerome sketches animals, their only hobby in this bleak world. Suddenly, Ernest hears a noise and runs outside, discovering that Mary has sneaked out to meet her secret boyfriend. The next day, Ernest and Jerome head to Sam's auction house. They intend to buy a mechanical mule, a robot called Sim or Sim Unit, to replace their dead donkey. Sam's son, Flem, competes against them in the bidding, pushing the price higher out of spite. Ernest wins, but the purchase puts him heavily in debt. They visit the hospital to see Catherine, Ernest's wife and the children's mother, who can't walk because of an accident caused long ago by Ernest's alcoholism. The hospital uses an expensive exoskeleton machine that helps her walk temporarily, and the only way for the family to bring her home is to buy the device themselves. After spending time with Catherine, Ernest and Jerome head home. On the road, they see Ruby and Sus, a couple carrying a baby and pretending to be poor beggars to get sympathy and money. Ernest keeps his distance, believing they're exploiting the child, but later he returns and gives them water. The couple even considers selling their baby because they can't afford to raise her, but Ernest begs them not to and promises to bring more water when he can. Back at the farm, Flem arrives. He's Mary's secret boyfriend. He asks Ernest if he can borrow the robot mule for work and promises to pay rent, but Ernest refuses unless Flem's father signs a paper guaranteeing the deal. Flem is insulted, tells Ernest he'll never revive the farm, and storms off. Later, Ernest and Jerome meet the Watermen again. Ernest demonstrates how well the robot mule performs and tries convincing them, yet again, to install a water pipeline to his property. Afterward, Ernest digs up an old pump so the Watermen can inspect it. While they work, Ernest tells Jerome he needs to go out, meet people, maybe even find a girlfriend. But Jerome prefers staying close to his art. On the way home, they see Flem speeding recklessly. Back at the farm, Mary is washing clothes by stuffing detergent into a vacuum cleaner. When Ernest arrives, he forbids her from going out again. She rebels, saying she's grown and can make her own choices. When Ernest insists he's only trying to protect her, Mary screams that she hates him and loves Flem. She tries to run away but bumps into Jerome and demands money. The delay gives Ernest time to catch her. Mary cries, accusing him of failing to protect the family. Ernest finally locks her in her room, and in her rage, she breaks the window. Not long after, Ernest and Jerome wake to discover the robot mule stolen. They rush to Sam, who tells them Flem left early in the morning and drove toward the mountains. It's revealed that Flem is obsessed with Ernest's land, land that originally belonged to Sam. Sam believes the land is worthless, but Flem is determined to get it back. Ernest tracks Flem into the mountains, but is suddenly knocked unconscious. He awakens at the watermen's camp, where they accuse him of stealing their gear using the robot mule. Ernest denies it, but Caleb, their leader, beats him brutally. A fight breaks out, and Ernest manages to grab Caleb's knife and then a rifle. He fires into the air to escape and runs off, with Caleb shouting threats behind him. On his way home, Ernest finds Flem sleeping by a fire. Sim is nearby, carrying the watermen's stolen equipment. Flem stole it all to frame Ernest. At sunrise, Ernest wakes Flem at gunpoint, ties him to Sim, and forces him to walk under the scorching heat. Flem taunts Ernest by mocking Mary, and Ernest shoves him to the ground as punishment. Eventually, both men grow dangerously dehydrated. Flem offers Ernest alcohol disguised as water. Ernest, a recovering alcoholic, begins to lose control. Flem pretends to drink too, claiming Caleb wants him dead and that he had to steal the truck just to survive. He offers Ernest money, but Ernest grows suspicious. When he tries to stand up, the alcohol overwhelms him. Flem seizes the chance, smashes Ernest's head with a rock, and leaves him to die. When Ernest wakes later, he is tied to Sim. Flem pours alcohol on his face to wake him like a madman, then leaves. Flem drives to the home farm where Mary willingly runs away with him. Jerome becomes worried when Ernest doesn't return and goes out searching. At night, he finds Sim at the watermen's camp. The men tell him Ernest died in a truck accident. At the funeral, Mary returns home. The siblings visit their mother to deliver the terrible news. Flem drives them, saying he will take care of them, but Jerome insists on walking. Flem stops the truck, questioning Jerome about Ernest's death, but Jerome shuts him out. Back at the farm, Jerome vents his grief by beating Sim. Flem stops him, saying they need the robot for work if they want to survive, and that he plans to help the family. He also shocks Jerome by revealing Mary is pregnant. Flem begins working relentlessly on the farm, trying to revive it. Soon he convinces Caleb to install a water pipeline after blackmailing him about Ernest's supposed death. With water flowing again, the farm begins to flourish. One night, Flem takes Ruby, Sus, the baby, and Sim with him to town. He sells the baby against Ruby's wishes. When Ruby protests, the buyers shoot her dead. Flem fires back and escapes. Sim is damaged in the crossfire and switches to factory return mode. The next morning, Flem lies to Jerome and Mary, claiming he sold Sim back to Ruby. Meanwhile, Sim makes its way back to its manufacturers. A technician named Calvin uses the robot's cameras to show Jerome the truth about his father's death. Jerome sees everything. Flem tying Ernest to the robot, sending him into the desert, and leaving him to die. Destroyed by what he's learned, Jerome returns home the next morning under heavy rain, the first rain in years. Jerome confronts Flem carefully. Sim suddenly shows up at the barn, confusing Flem, who tries to invent an excuse. Days later, Jerome pretends they got a letter from Ruby. Flem panics. When Flem goes to search for the rifle, Jerome lies and tells him he sent it for repairs. Flem forces himself to act calm. Later, following a fake message supposedly from Ruby, Flem goes to the desert looking for her. Instead, he falls into a hidden pit and breaks his leg. Sim watches silently as he screams for help. Jerome appears, holding a rock. Flem realizes Jerome knows the truth. He begs desperately, swearing he's sorry, begging Jerome to think of Mary and the unborn child. Jerome, trembling with rage and trauma, shoots Flem and kills him. When he returns home, he tells Mary that Flem abandoned her. He doesn't reveal the truth about Ernest's murder. With the money from the revived farm, the siblings buy their mother the walking machine she needs. They move forward, trying to rebuild a life in a world where survival demands both strength and sacrifice, just as Ernest always believed.